Okay, let's just jump right into this explainer. We're looking at exactly how a 21-year-old sultan pulled off what previous empires literally could not do for over a millennium. We're talking about the incredibly calculated tactics behind Sultan Mehmed II's conquest of Constantinople in 1453. And, this wasn't just your standard battle. It was a complete masterclass in psychological warfare, insane technological innovation, and just sheer audacity.
So to really understand this heist-like military operation, we have to start with a massive question. How on earth do you take down a target that has shrugged off countless attacks from Goths, Arabs, and Crusaders? For centuries, the brightest military minds threw absolutely everything they had at Constantinople, and for centuries, they all went home empty-handed. The city's defenses were practically a geographical and engineering miracle. I mean, think about it. For over 1,000 years, the Byzantine capital stood as the ultimate impenetrable vault. Right up until 1453, it survived siege after siege. Bringing down an empire with a 1,000-year track record of surviving? That requires way more than just a massive army. It demands a total reimagining of siege warfare.
Section 1. The Unbreachable Target, Constantinople's Ultimate Vault.
Now, to really grasp the stakes here, look at this insane mismatch in forces. The Byzantine emperor, Constantine XI, had maybe 8,500 men on a good day. And we're mostly talking about untrained local militia and monks, plus a small handful of Italian mercenaries. On the flip side, Mehmed shows up with well over 100,000 well-equipped men, including his highly trained elite infantry, the Janissaries. But hey, as history had already proven time and time again, superior numbers mean absolutely zero if you can't actually get past those walls.
And this city was locked down tight. We're talking a 12-mile network of multi-layered defensive walls, backed up by these deep, formidable moats. But honestly, the most brilliant defensive feature was the Great Chain. Literally a massive iron chain stretching all the way across the entrance to the Golden Horn Harbor. It physically blocked enemy ships from getting in, meaning a direct naval assault was practically impossible, and those vulnerable seawalls stayed perfectly safe from bombardment.
Which brings us to Section 2, the squeeze, preparing the ground.
Mehmed was smart. He knew he couldn't just run up and attack blindly. He had to squeeze the city first, way before a single cannon was even fired. So he starts by building the Rumeli Asari fortress right on the European side of the Bosphorus Strait, and he does it in just a matter of months. It was perfectly placed to completely choke off naval supply routes coming down from the Black Sea. Any ship trying to sneak supplies into Constantinople had to run a deadly gauntlet of Ottoman cannons. He was essentially locking the doors to the room before the fight even started.
All right, Section 3. Brute Force Innovation, the Advent of the Basilic.
Facing walls that were just way too thick for traditional siege engines, Mehmed greenlit a terrifying leap in military technology. He hires this ingenious Hungarian engineer named Urban to cast a weapon capable of shattering the walls of Babylon itself. The result? The Basilic, a monstrous 20-ton gunpowder cannon. This thing wasn't just a weapon, it was a pure psychological terror machine.
The sheer scale of this thing is wild to think about. It was over 24 feet long and fired half-ton granite balls over a mile. Getting it from Edirne to Constantinople was a total logistical nightmare. It required 400 men and 90 oxen just to drag it. Imagine the traffic jam that caused. But when it finally fired, the deafening explosion just shattered both the ancient Roman walls and the defenders' morale. Actually, it wasn't a perfect weapon. It was massive, slow, and ran incredibly hot. It took hours to reload, they had to cool it down with olive oil, and the recoil was so incredibly violent it sometimes literally crushed its own operators. And eventually, it blew itself apart. But it introduced this completely new era of unrelenting, frantic 24-hour bombardment. The defenders were kept awake, terrified, constantly scrambling in the dark to patch holes in their walls with mud and rubble.
Moving to Section 4, the unthinkable bypass, ships on dry land.
Even with the heavy bombardment, Mehmed's siege was kind of stalling. In April, a few Christian supply ships actually managed to fight their way through the Ottoman blockade and deliver food. That great chain across the harbor? It held fast, completely rendering Mehmed's massive navy useless. So here's the million-dollar question. If you can't get your ships into the water to attack the vulnerable seawalls, how on earth do you win?
Well, this dilemma sparked one of the absolute most audacious tactical maneuvers in all of military history. Under the cover of darkness, Mehmed's forces built a wooden slipway up and over the steep hill behind the Genoese colony of Galata. They slathered the logs in animal fat, and then, using sheer manpower and animals, they literally hauled 70 warships out of the water, dragged them over a hill, and dropped them directly into the Golden Horn. Just imagine the absolute shock for the Byzantines, waking up to find an enemy fleet sitting right inside their perfectly secure harbor. Unbelievable.
Section 5. The final crack. Breaking the city.
So, with ships now inside the harbor, the Byzantine defenders were stretched impossibly thin. The whole thing was a grueling 54-day pressure cooker, from the cannons firing on day 1 to the overland ship stunt on day 17, all the way to day 46 when the emperor bravely rejected a final surrender offer. This relentless, grinding pace forced high-stakes desperation on everyone involved.
And inside the Ottoman camp, things were getting really tense. Some of Mehmet's top advisors were terrified by rumors of a Western relief force and actually begged him to just pack it up and retreat. But Mehmet, he doubles down with this famous, chilling ultimatum. Either I take the city, or the city takes me dead or alive. He just injected his exhausted army with this fierce do-or-die resolve. There was absolutely no turning back.
Early morning, May 29th. He launches a relentless, perfectly choreographed three-wave assault. First wave, conscripts to tire out the defenders. Second wave, irregular troops to push the bleeding line even further. Finally, when the Byzantines can barely even lift their weapons, he unleashes the Janissaries. During all this chaos, the brilliant Genoese commander Giustiniani was mortally wounded, which absolutely tanked the defenders' morale. And then, the fatal crack. An unguarded sally port, basically a small hidden side door in the walls left open by mistake, was finally exploited. The Ottomans just poured right in between the inner and outer defenses.
The impenetrable city finally fell. Mehmed rides in, secures the Hagia Sophia, and works to restore order. At just 21 years old, his absolutely unorthodox military tactics had brought down the 1,000-year Byzantine Empire. He definitely earned the title of the Conqueror.
Yet, in the aftermath, as he stood there amidst the ancient ruins of the most powerful city on earth, the young sultan supposedly had a moment of deep reflection. He recited this really haunting Persian poetry, just marveling at how even the greatest empires eventually crumble to dust and get reclaimed by nature.
The story of 1453 is about so much more than just walls and giant cannons. It's about looking at an unsolvable problem and deciding, you know what, I'm just going to drag my ships over a mountain. So I want to leave you with this final thought to take away from this explainer. What unbreachable walls in our modern world, whether in business, science, or society, are just waiting for the exact right, unorthodox strategy to bring them down. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.